Go ahead. Just try to provoke me.
Oh, I just got up, man.
Oh, come on. Bust your daddy's chops.
Fine.
Welcome to the Procreative Podcast. This is MARZ. My guest today is Adam Baumeister. Adam is the founder of Meep Records here in Denver. They make really cool lathe-cut vinyl records, and he ships them all over the world. He's turned it into a successful business, and he's also a musician and also the dad of a tween. And I really felt like this episode hit on every level that I ever hoped the show would. I really barely knew Adam before this, and I felt like we had a really well-connected conversation. He looped me into a lot of ways of thinking about making a living and kind of getting over yourself, your career as an artist. It's kind of like an ego death in a way, is to let it go, and in turn you're rewarded with new sources of creativity. And I really felt like that was something that I struggled with when my daughter was in the baby phase, and even right now, it's that you feel like you're constantly butting up against time constraints, and with that comes a feeling of inadequacy and comparison. And Adam's just been doing this a lot longer than I have, and it was good to have another perspective on looking back at this time. And he actually had a lot of reverence for the toddler age, and I thought it was super cool. Really glad we got to get him on the show. So without further delay here, I'm going to give you Adam Baumeister. I'm here with Adam Baumeister. Adam, thanks for coming on the podcast.
No problem.
Adam, for those who might not be familiar with your work, can you tell us a little bit about Meep Records and some of the music that you work on?
Yeah. Meep Records, I make lathe-cut records for people, which is a older way to record music onto a flat disc. And I have a website, and people send in their music, whatever audio they have, and I make records for them. And I turned it into a little business, and it works for now, which is nice because vinyl is super popular. Everyone wants vinyl. So that's good. I also play music. I have most of my life. Been in a bunch of bands, did some touring, put out some records when I was younger more. And now I still play music, but don't play out very much. I play very many shows or go hard that way. But yeah, I still am making music and making records every day almost.
So how long ago did you start Meep Records?
About 5 years ago, I think. And it was mostly just to make, I didn't know if it would work. I just bought some equipment and started messing with it. Wanted to make records for bands I was in and friends, if I could, or just weird little art records to give out or sell at Wax Tracks or something. And it ended up sounding better than I thought. And I ended up getting better at cutting them and getting the sound to where I started offering it to other people, like friends around town. And then eventually it was like, oh, I should start a website and try to make money at this. And it took a long time to do that.
Right. You had to learn all the different aspects of, sounds like business,
website, making the records was probably the hardest. I spent so much time and money doing that.
And you were doing this all the time of being a dad.
And having a job. I was waiting tables probably that whole time, like full time. Mm-hmm. And also co-parenting with someone, but raising my daughter, yeah.
Right. And how old is she?
She's going to be 13 in a couple weeks.
Right.
So I'll have a teenager, although we're already there. We're already there. She kind of already is a teenager, but
is that tween when they're...
Yeah, I guess so. She's a definite tween. You notice things about like her use of Instagram and stuff like that. You notice how so much advertising is towards tweens, and she just kind of follows along. She's kind of can't help but be swept up in it.
They're just
like,
completely unaware
just
at that
like
point.
princess movies,
Right.
are just like candy for that age brain, the young woman's brain.
What are the ways that they reach tweens, you think?
And then, well, like YouTube videos and YouTube stars and their friends now. There's 3 girls at her school that are all friends, and they will get in the car and be like, will you please take us to Starbucks? There's this new Starbucks drink with like purple foam that tastes like goji berries, and that we saw on Instagram.
That's goji berries.
It's they see this advertisement essentially, but it's on their Instagram feeds and they all want to do it. And then they get there and they get the drink and then they all take selfies or a picture with it and post it on Instagram and do it. So they're doing all this advertising work for companies as well, which is really interesting.
The unknowing carrier of the message.
I try to tell them. They just
the little carrier pigeons.
They don't listen yet.
Right. That's you, Dad. You're the problem.
So yeah, the tweens and early teens now. Oh man, with social media and stuff,
I
hard.
can't imagine it. I have a sister who's around that age, and it's hard to watch.
We're split up. We've been split up for a long time, but my daughter's mother got her a phone around 8 or 9, I want to say, and didn't ask me, and I was so upset. But once you've like opened Pandora's box, it's like
you're not taking that phone away.
My daughter is addicted to her phone, I think.
Yeah, I think everybody is.
Yeah, I mean, I am too, actually. Like it's terrible.
Right. I've been thinking about that because my toddler doesn't really realize my phone consumption habits, but it's only a matter of time until she's like, get off your phone.
Oh, yeah.
Pay attention.
Yeah. Or she'll see those habits and just think it's normal.
The only way
She'll
I have to leave it sometimes when we're going out somewhere.
Yeah,
I'm like, I just want to be with her. We went to the Denver Nature and Science Museum yesterday and I just left it in the car.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You should do that. Shouldn't always be on your phone. Well, who knows what your daughter's going to be.
It's probably going to be implanted in their brains.
I don't think we're there yet, but maybe her kids.
Right.
But you're right,
Right. Well, it's safer, right? I mean, no one's going to stop. We're not going to stop texting and driving. The only way is to interface it with your brain so you're not.
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe not.
You've seen that, the Werner Herzog, I think it's PSA, like the public service announcement, that there's like public service announcements that we've seen as kids growing up that show on TV. Mm-hmm. They hired Werner Herzog to make one for texting while driving, and it's the most sobering, terrible thing. Do you know who that is? The German director?
I don't.
This German director is fascinating, but he made like a short PSA about texting while driving. That's terrible. Anyways.
It's scary.
Yeah.
Scary stuff. So you've been doing this, and you are also a single dad as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how long have you guys been separated about?
Of most of our life, 12 years.
12 years. And what was that? I guess let's start first with, what was that transition like? Like, how did you find your place with that?
I imagine it's different for everyone. The situation is always different. I think I was lucky in that it was not easy by any means, but God, I've seen lots of hard ones that are way worse, right? When people break up, it's nasty sometimes. When there's a kid involved, there's so many emotions. It's really hard. How you grapple with it is however you grapple with it. God. Me personally, I felt a little lucky that Nicole, that her mother was so cool, and that she's a great kid. And eventually I got to the point, I'll say, I don't know about that at the time. It was just hard. was terrible. I was young. I was 23, 24.
Mm-hmm.
I was 24 years old. And I wasn't an adult. When I think back to my 23-year-old self that found out I was going to be a dad, I cried because like I couldn't like be that like traveling musician I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole idea I had of my life and myself had to change. And that was really hard, I think, at first. But after a while, you realize that that's like kind of immature and egotistical, and you kind of, and that it gets replaced with like, I'm really glad that I have a kid, and that's way more rewarding than like me being like, I just want to travel around, drink beer, hang out in taverns and meet lots of pretty women, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that's like kind of like a romantic ideal, I think a lot of, at least in my profession of musicians, like it seems like a thing I wanted to do. So that's really hard, but then eventually it's like, I don't know, it's the best.
Agreed. It is the best.
That stuff seems really quaint and silly to me now.
Mm-hmm.
And having the love of like a family, and even though it seems like a weird dysfunctional family, is way better.
Were you touring and playing out a lot before her?
I did after, when she was really young, and that was all due to her mother being super cool about it. But that would mean, you know, when I toured, I would work full time and get 2 or 3 weeks off of my job. I could never go on tour where I was like, screw you, job. I'm taking off. I would be like, yeah, guys, I can go for this tour and this tour and this tour in a couple weeks at a time. And luckily, I think the band, I don't remember the politics of the time, but like it was fairly like, that was like, okay, like, yeah, like we couldn't afford to do that anyways because we were just like a young rock and roll band and not making any money. We'd save up money to go on tour. We'd have a couple of shows before we left to pay for money for gas. I would sometimes sell a guitar. I sold my favorite guitar, I still think about it, to go on a 2-week tour, you know, just to pay rent, be able to eat on the road, and come back and have money to pay for child support and everything else. And yeah.
Right. The part now that seems difficult is when I would go on a tour before, it would be like coming back to, now what? For one tour, I had quit my job, which is certainly not a possibility anymore.
Yeah.
There's got to be a life, which is interesting because you have to balance the kind of spontaneity and adventure of that life with having the stability of what a child demands.
Yeah. What's weird, when you were just saying that, it made me think of something which is like a hard truth and a little sad that I'll say. But I'll say that like there's a lot of people growing up in like a music community and playing music. Like when that's all you have, like it's hard, man. Because what that world is based on, it's not necessarily like based on like it has a friendship community. You're all playing music, and you meet a lot of friends, and it's my community in town and everything like that, which is great. But it's based around usually the sale of alcohol and late nights and or drugs or whatever. Sometimes it doesn't have to be, but I'd say there's a gigantic industry built upon that. And that's how you make money, is interacting with that. It's like playing those kind of shows is how you make a couple $100, and which is enough money to pay a few members of the band $100, hopefully. And y'all come away with something, you know, go towards rent a little bit instead of like buying drinks one night or whatever.
Yeah.
And whatever you were just saying there, the feeling I got from it, I forget, was, so I feel really fortunate to have something else besides music. Besides being in a band, playing shows and recording songs and messing around, something like that. It's so good to have a respite from that. And my insane brain probably would not have ever done that if I weren't to accidentally to have had a child.
Right. You'd have been singularly focused and unwilling to part
I learned
from that.
so much about being not, well, you know, not caring about yourself 100%. You're caring for another person.
Right.
And I guess that's what I'm getting at. It's like there's this, I had to learn and become this other person due to raising a child,
Right.
which was super rewarding, as rewarding as being in a band that plays cool shows or whatever.
It's like a fast track to learning to be less selfish.
Yeah, it is. This is a really fast track to learning to be less selfish, which I find is a good quality.
Right.
I'm not, this is my opinion.
Right. It's definitely not how I would have approached music to begin with. It was probably more so, look what I'm doing.
There's a lot of that music in it. So, and then what I would say is that coming back around has helped me become a better musician.
Interesting.
No one knows who, I don't have a name. I don't make money at doing music or whatever, but like, I think I'm probably more satisfied because like I have grander thoughts. My scope is wider.
Right. Yeah, that tunnel vision is really interesting. And I think that it is, in the long run, better to have more options for, the way you bring in money or the way that you're going to build a career anyway. But I think that having a child, for me, also made me take in that hard truth a little more forcefully and in a real way.
Like, I can't, like, it's being, you and I are just young white male musicians who probably love to just play rock and roll music and freak out with friends and do whatever. Like that's, I still love it. Mm-hmm. But if your life becomes just that and you do it for 20 years, like me, like a lot of people, it kills a lot of people. Mm-hmm. For good, really, it kills a lot of people. It's terrible.
Right. And I realized too that there was stuff about my family and my past that I wanted to heal and to do right by my daughter.
Yeah.
That if I went so singularly focused down that road, that I was going to end up repeating those things and causing them in her life too.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Try not to.
I want to be a good dad. Being a good dad's great. It's more rewarding than being a cool musician a couple times in your prime in your little local city, or even if you play big shows in New York City a couple,
What's your idea of fulfillment, or dare I say success?
In the creative terms, or the
with
daddy terms?
We'll say with music.
I would love to be successful with music. I've never even gotten a chance or a close thing. But in my way to where I guess I'm satisfied, I mean, successful, this is what I love to talk about, and I don't think we should talk about it, is what music is for. And I think we live in like a paradigm, like a zeitgeist world of where we think of music as like a ways and means to become rich and famous, which is like what the whole society we brought up in. Like, how could you think anything else in the last 60 years if you grew up at post Elvis Presley or whatever like that? It's like, oh, music, like you got girls, you're a rock star, you do this, And so not everyone thinks about that, but I'd say a lot of people think about that's what music is. Like, think of you're a musician, you mean someone who doesn't do it? Like, oh, you must be like really cool. It's like, no, it's not cool. It's not glamorous, blah, blah, blah. But, where was I going with that?
I think the social function of music. Right?
Yeah. So music, how I feel successful is like, there's music for different ways. I feel I write a good song, or I get a good recording and I make a good song, and then I'm happy with that. And then hopefully someone else will like it one day, but I don't want to spend a bunch of time and money trying to. I can't. I don't know if this has to do with me having a kid early or if it's just a personality thing, but I also like have a really hard time like selling myself or being like, hey, listen to my shit, Every once in a while I can do it, but like all the time and like you're always on and going,
You're always on.
I just can't do that. I'm not good at that.
Right.
But being successful with music is, I don't know, it's different things to a lot of different people.
So there's two shocks to your system, I think, in your situation. It seems like, and probably also with mine, where you find out that you're going to have a child, and you're thinking about how that's going to affect you, and then you've got the second one of, wait, I have a child now. I'm about to be on my own with it. So how did the realization that you're going to be a single parent affect your visions of what you needed to be doing with your art or how you were going to make a life with it?
It definitely affected decisions I'd make. I was lucky enough to be, I wouldn't even call myself a single parent. I would call her mother the single parent, and I was the helper. And so I got a lot of the responsibility taken. I didn't have a lot of it on me because she took it off, especially in the early years. And I guess my art little world was fortunate for that because I had some more free time. But also like I don't know. You got priorities, and your music career is not your first priority. And I guess that's different for everyone. It can be. I know people who have kids and they have the partners there, and that person can do it, and you can go off on your music career and tour a lot and do that kind of stuff, and that works. I know people who do that, and it works. Sometimes it doesn't affect it, but if you're a single parent, you've got to it's almost harder because if you're with someone, you're sharing rent, and the kid has one bedroom. If you're separate, you're each paying for your own place with a bedroom for the kid, and it's like literally more expensive. And especially in this city at this time, it's like just hard. Super hard. And so your priorities are, you have to work.
You gotta make money.
Work, and you got to be there for your kid. You got to do that stuff the days of the week you have your kid if it's split up. And then if you the free time you have beyond all that, yay, you can make art if you want, or just go to sleep and eat Ben and Jerry's and watch Netflix, which maybe sounds more fun at that point.
So that's another thing is it's not just these two, worlds of, I have my child sometimes and then I make my art over here. I found that time making your art is when probably, I'm guessing, most people would be relaxing or taking some self-care, me time. And it's easy to forego that when you want to just put that energy into creating stuff.
Yeah.
But that, it is fun, but it's also work a lot of the time. So that's creating an environment where you're just on all the time.
Yeah.
And it's very draining. And especially, are you getting enough sleep in general?
Now I am. But the early years, yeah, I understand. It's different.
So is there anything that you kind of wish, as far as your self-care and, managing your mental health, that you would have known in those early years that you look back on?
I don't know. To relax a little bit more, I guess. Although you can't really relax all the time when you're with your child, but in the early years. I look back with like yearning for the early years. It was special. I felt like it was nice. It was chill. Once you get over like yourself a little bit with like your artistic career or whatever like that, I think it rewarded me with like new inspiration for arts and stuff like that. And then once your kid starts school, it gets a lot easier and you have more time. And then it just kind of goes from there. Like you can always find time. It's like how many in the whole long history. I feel a lot of people will think that, oh, my artist career is dead. What I came into going to this podcast with was I was going to be like, what do I think about it, with knowing about it, and what I listen to a little bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like your art, if you're a musician, potter, sewer, whatever, your career or what you like to do, your life, if you're a gardener, whatever, life doesn't end when you have a child. Like you'll spend some time with a child. The first few years, more so. And then it just gets less and less, or more and more if you're carting them around. I cart them around a lot, but there's plenty of time in the day to do something creative. Take 5 minutes in your backyard and write a haiku for a song. Involve your kid, which I've done. I have old recordings of Adelas playing keyboard, and when I need a noise part, like get her into that, play, being especially if your job or your hobby, part of your life is a creative endeavor, having a child will be more rewarding in opening your mind to looking at things through a child's way, in a naivety way, like a naive way, kind of as a child, but also a super smart one. Like, I'm not saying that correctly, but like, you look through the world a different way by having to explain every damn thing to a human being.
Right.
About the world. When you got to catch a little human being up with like where we're at. Well, the Roman Empire, World War II, that phone, those are just advertisements by people making tons of money in New York, made that shoot this to your phone. It's not just you in this place who thinks Starbucks is special. My daughter would say things like, she grew up around a lot of music, and she's at the Denver School of Arts down the street. Some other girl wore a Pink Floyd shirt. She was like, "Oh yeah, what's your favorite Pink Floyd song?" The girl like couldn't name one, and my daughter's like, "God, like she doesn't even know Pink Floyd is." Like, I know everything. I'm like, you don't know shit about Pink Floyd, Adela. Quit being like you're the first person to like Pink Floyd. Come on.
Pretty sure I was like that.
We all were. And you get to watch it and you get to reflect and learn. And that gives you more foresight and you understand your world better.
And that will be creative. Slowly whittled down until you become a parent and you realize. Actually, one of the I remember reading that book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And one of his important lessons to give you was just realize that you're really not that special. Yeah. And that there's a freedom in that.
I've never read the book, but I don't know if it's wisdom. It may be bad for some people, but you're going to live a little easier if you can let it all go.
Right.
And I think children help you realize that. When you see your kids doing the same stuff, and you see yourself doing the same stuff as your parents, and you're like, damn. You're like, maybe I don't.
Ain't that?
Oh, and like kind of like what you're saying in that quote is like, like part of being a little bit of, I don't know, being wise or whatever is just knowing you don't know everything. Like coming from the stance of expectations and I know what things are going to be like and I'm in control is an illusion that some people probably can't ever let go of. But if you don't have that, if you know that you're not in control, you don't know shit. Mm-hmm. And what you do know is full of holes and misinformation and from your point of view, and you've gotten it through secondhand sources, and your view of the world is probably not like 100% foolproof either, is like helpful in raising a child, in adapting and going with different things in life in general, and especially with having a kid, I think.
Right. And some of it's so ridiculous. You know, when you're out with a little one and they're just throwing a absolute
temper
tantrum. I mean, the best thing you can do is realize that it doesn't matter, and this is just where you're at, and the less serious you take yourself, you're only gonna like feel that better.
Yeah, because it's really all not that serious.
No.
There's been people going around for 100,000 years doing weird shit, and we're just one iteration of it. There's been artists and farmers and everyone else trying to raise kids, and we're all just trying to do our best. And we're in one of the best and easiest times to do it, probably.
Right.
Us currently in this geographic location, you know? So it's, did not take things too seriously. Know you know you're learning and don't know shit is important, I think. and being open to learning. When you don't know something and it gets uncomfortable and you have to learn something, usually that feels good. Like if you just do that a couple times and learn it and like get used to it, whether it's waking up early or I don't know. It's good. I hope.
Yeah, it's full of little and I would say that the lessons come in a way where you realize, okay, I'm not getting enough sleep, and actually I can't do anything like when I'm like this. So it's not like someone told you that or you read it. It's things that you learn from experience that often hit so hard that you're not gonna repeat them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you're having trouble sleeping, go to sleep earlier. I mean, I say that like some people have a choice. Some people have a really hard time falling asleep, and they're night people and they're up or whatever. But go to sleep earlier. And when you're a kid, I feel like she helped me slow down and relax more. Like I feel that's different. I had the bad end of it. Maybe I was just a lucky kid. I didn't cry a lot at night, and mom dealt with it a lot because she was breastfeeding, and I'd be like, I'm awake, kind of. And you know, so that really early baby part of it, obviously you're going to lose some sleep, but it passes, you know? And then, but like when your kid's like 3 or something like that, it's like, I would take afternoon naps. Like I'd be exhausted from work and pickups and doing all this stuff. But then I'd be like, oh, can we watch Moana for the 100th time and take a nap at 2:00 in the afternoon? And I'd fall asleep. I'd take a nap, you know? It's great. It made me chill out a little bit. Like I love afternoon naps. I haven't taken one in forever, but I did for like a couple times a week for a year or two, a couple years maybe, or at least had quiet time when she was asleep.
Did you have any experience to draw from as far as your own parents being separated or family?
My parents are still together, and I would say I love them. I'm glad they're together, but also I grew up around a lot of fighting and passive aggressive weirdness. And innumerable times over the years, I think Nicole and I have both expressed happiness that we split up when we did, and that at least Adela doesn't hear us fighting all the goddamn time, which we would have and did before she was born and when she was really young. And she deals with household drama of any sort in my house and her house separately. But like it's always been kind of a respite. You can go back and forth. I think co-parenting with two different places, two different parents was ideal.
Yeah.
I would say from my point of view, from my parents' things, which this can be different, but having two people working on the problem, and then when you're not the problem, working on the problem, taking care of the child and not working on the problem. When you have one person doing it and then the other person has a few days off or whatever, it's necessary.
Right.
It's super helpful. It made my life and my artistic choices or what I was able to do more free. So it was great. I think that's like ideal. Like I think, and I'm also like, the idea of marriage and shit like that seems quite old fashioned to me because I'm just like a super weirdo kind of far out there guy too. In some ways, I guess, maybe in relationships.
So what's it like bringing in another partner into the mix?
Oh yeah, so that's a good one. That's interesting. So interesting. I'll tell you, I've been in 3 kind of long-term relationships with her, and Nicole was in. Sorry, I don't want to be using her name. I don't know. That's fine, but whatever. I didn't. It's different. It's different, man. I'll say that when she had someone who moved in with her and was around Adela a lot, was basically like a stepfather, lived with her and was there all the time, and I didn't really like him. It was fucking difficult. That's terrible. If you don't like the person, and even early on, you're probably still a little sore from the breakup, maybe a little jealous. There's nothing harder, right? That's not easy. So that's always hard. But if you like the person, it can be chill. Once you all get along, it's good. It's good. And I was with the dynamic between the two people is difficult too. Like, I've had a girlfriend, and then her mom and them didn't get along. That can be hard because then the kid acts out towards. Oh man, there's nothing easy about it. But I would say that I like that Adela's known a few. They haven't been mother types or whatever, but they've just been other older women that she's had to be around, had a few meals with, hung out with, gone to the movies with, and was around. Even I lived with someone who lived with her, so like they were together a lot, and we were together for a long time. This is a surprising thing. This is one thing I learned that surprised me. So I was with someone for like 5-6 years, lived together. I would say was not her stepmom essentially, but like was around a lot. They knew each other. They loved each other. Spent time together. We went to the hot springs together. Went to the mountains. Spent time. And when we were breaking up, something that killed me was I was like, we're breaking up, and I was sad. But then I was like, but this is gonna kill Adela. This is gonna kill her. Like, you've been around so much. You live here. Like, splitting up is gonna be like a break. It made me really sad to think about like that they had this bond and that was splitting up because of it. And it happened. We split up. She moved out. It's this whole thing takes a long time, obviously. And Adela was like, chill. I was like, I was all beat up and like, how are you doing, Adela? I know are you doing all right? She's like, yeah, it's fine. She's like, yeah, I get it. All right, I'll see her a bit, like whatever.
How old was she when that happened?
8, 9, 10.
So old enough to.
It happened 2 or 3 times every like 4 or 5 years, I guess, most of her life. But like, they're adaptable. The kids are way more adaptable, and they're less caught up in your love life, probably, than you think.
Right. How soon do you feel like it was good to bring in a partner?
You want to make sure that partner's the right person. Well, some people don't. Like, I mean, like, we're young people, and like, I had a dating life, and her mom had a dating life. And so there were probably some people floating in and out who didn't last, who weren't around a lot, But I would say it's very important to like keep that shit out of that part until you're like in love and like blah 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 and like gonna do it, which is a couple months, can be a couple weeks, can be a couple months, could be a year for some people. But it's good to like maybe only introduce them to the really important ones. Right. Not everyone, if you're dating a lot of people, it's different for everyone. But you gotta, you don't want to be like, oh, this is Sarah, oh, this is so-and-so, oh, this is so-and-so, oh, this is so-and-so, like all the time.
Right.
I feel that naturally. I may be wrong. Some people may be being like, oh, that's...
How old was she when you started noticing that she was, taking
in more of...
Yeah, taking in more of your life and who these people are?
I mean, they're little sponges, and they're doing that constantly the whole time. But once they start like thinking about it more, like 5 or 6, 4 or 5, 6, they start like becoming more like, I mean, I get messed up with ages. Like before 5 and 6, they're talking all the time, pretty much have a good vocabulary, and you can talk to them about almost anything, except for like hard concepts or whatever. So like, they're getting most of that shit by then. They're listening all the time, and they have weird ideas about things. Like you'll realize that like you'll be in some 2-year relationship. That's some big thing, and you'll have worried about how it affects your daughter or your son and all this stuff. And then you'll talk to your kid when they're like 10, like 5 years down the road, and you had this big thing about it, and they'll be like, oh yeah, that person. I have like some vague memory of that person. I thought they were like your friend who like cleaned the sink that time. You know, they have like just the weirdest, and that you like hired them, but then they were like my auntie kind of. Like they have weird ideas of like what the hell is going on that, you know, aren't really like with what's going on in your mind, probably.
Right. She was there to fix the sink.
She was there to fix the sink, and she was my auntie. You know, they have like, because they like latch on to one memory where like she probably, you know, stayed over every weekend for a year, but one time
Just couldn't get that sink fixed.
Yeah, that one time you were fixing the sink, and that memory caught in and melded with some other memory of some dream she had, and that's like her idea of that person years later. Anyway.
Well, it adds a whole nother time element. You know, you're making a new relationship, and then you've got taking care of the child also, and then you've got, you know, you've got work, you've got your art that you make.
It's hard to
balance.
Ain't enough time in the day, man. Ain't enough time in the day. That's for sure. That's why you need a helper. That's why you need 2 people.
Right.
Honestly, you need 2 people. One person, man. How can you? You can't. I mean, if you have to work all the time, like you can't barely have a job, you know? Just with, I don't know, it's crazy. You need lots of help from the community, another partner, hopefully. It ain't easy.
Were there any resources or kind of mentors that you had going through this? Or parents that were...
I was the first of the bunch, for sure. I was the first of anyone close to me to have to deal with this, so I felt very alone. I was lucky that I had family in town, so I had some like support. Like, but no, we tried to use some free childcare for a while, and it didn't work. Man, it's just, it's not easy. You need 2 people working jobs to make money for the situation, and you need 2 people who are taking care of business when they're not working. It's a lot of time, but it gets easier, you know, like gets easier. And within that moment, there's times when she naps, when they're at school, night,
Right.
You can still do stuff. And there's like, we're also in this weird American concept of you have to raise kids a certain way, which is like another one of those zeitgeists of like the moment that's not necessarily how kids have been raised. You know, you can raise your kid like helicopter parents, or like just letting them, it's got to learn that if you touch that, it's going to get burned eventually, you know? Like that's how kids learn, you know, like you got to, it's okay to be somewhere in between, and one way sometimes and the other way sometimes. You don't have to be, there's not a certain way you have to be.
Do you think she's fed off of any of the, you know, creative lifestyle things that you've introduced her to?
Yeah, she loves music, and she's definitely a creative person. She's a dancer. She's a good writer, a good reader.
You have a favorite project that you guys have worked on together? Some music?
Tons. I started this thing when I was younger that's really cute. I think they're still on the internet, a Pinterest page, because Pinterest had just come out, and I posted like pictures of, it made me more creative having a child, actually, because I was always doing like, you can't like, if I'm creative and just doing music and I didn't have a kid, get some beer. Let's get some beer. Like, and then you end up hanging out on the porch or like stuff like that. But like when I had a kid and they were like, you need to take up time, and they're like, let's build clay things a bit, or let's draw, or let's color, whatever it starts off of. And then you start doing, you buy kids some cheap paint sets that you saw for their birthday. Oh, this will occupy some time. So like I learned how to like, her and I did lots of like bakeable clay creatures, which I loved doing. I still have those, some of them around the house. We don't do it anymore, but I loved making clay creatures.
Yeah.
And doing like weird stuff like that.
And friends never want to color anymore.
Friends never want to come over and like do that and like make. Oh, so there's so many things. Okay, so I made clay animals. I'd make like. Recently, there's the big slime craze. We had to make a bunch of slime and got into that. For a long time during the princess phase and out of that, there was a big mermaid phase. And I learned to sew. I made her mermaid tails that you could, out of fabric, like swimming suit fabric, that's, that you sew it and you make a big tail at the end. And then you'd find these like mono fins that you can buy on the internet for like $25, and you'd fit it around there and stick it in there, and she'd go to the pool and be a little mermaid and play around.
Did you get yours too?
I did not ever make myself one. I wish I would.
Gonna need another.
I made like 10 mermaid tails throughout the years.
Wow.
For birthdays and Christmases, because I'm terrible at sewing, and they'd break after a while because you're thrashing around them in the pool. But
it's pushed you to learn things that you otherwise wouldn't have.
Sculpting.
Yeah.
Sewing.
Hair braiding,
definitely.
Yeah.
And they teach you stuff and you teach them stuff. She shows me all sorts of crazy stuff now. Pretty wild.
Awesome. Adam, it's been really great having you on the show. I really enjoyed talking to you about this. Where can people find out more about your music and order some Meep Records?
I guess Meep Records is just the default name for everything on the internet. So there's the website where you can order records, and there's Bandcamp site where it has my own personal music on it. So just Google Meep Records if you want to know anything more about me.
The Procreative Podcast was produced by me, Jay MARZ, at Moon Magnet Studios in Denver, Colorado. It was mastered by Reed Fox, and our music was provided by Kevin Netz. You can find more at moonmagnetmusic.com.